Woodland Outdoor Ministries has always had a mission. We seek out people that have handicaps or disabilities or circumstances in their lives that prevent them from enjoying the outdoors like we've always been able to, and we take them out and we try very hard to minister to their every need, but also try very hard to make them successful at a hunt. And it is a blessing to be able to do so. Now, our goal is to be an encouragement to them, to give them hope, to make the situation that they're in better. But we find oftentimes that we ourselves are given much more than we could ever give. That we find that we learn a lot about encouragement. We learn about hardship. We learn a lot about endurance and faith and hope. I want to tell you a story about one of those lessons that we learned. The story is about Brandi. Brandi was one of our hunters that we took out last year. And through a series of circumstances, we were able to hunt with her ourselves originally because she was from Arkansas. We were just going to send her on a hunt, but we were able to take her ourselves over in Texas. And a little background about Brandi. Brandi was born in rural Arkansas, in the kind of the hillbilly part of Arkansas around Hot Springs, and Brandi was born with Down syndrome. When Brandi was 3 years old, one afternoon in the dead of winter, she wandered away from home. You know how little kids can be. Turn your back for a second and boom, they're gone. But she wandered away from home, and the family began to search for her, and they couldn't find her, so they started calling in help, and more help began to arrive, and the sense of urgency began to increase because, again, it was bitterly cold outside, and it was getting dark. And near their home was a small river there was no way Brandi could have crossed it, not and survived, even under the best of circumstances, but certainly not with the icy water and the conditions of wintertime. They found one of her tennis shoes in that little river. They continued to search all night. The temperatures dropped down into the teens. And you know, when I heard the story, they never talked about anyone giving up hope, but they had to, I believe, at least some of them begin to see the reality of the situation and the odds of them finding Brandi alive being very slim. Well, the next day, as they had looked all night, it began daylight, and the next morning, one of the guys that was looking for them decided to look on the other side of the river where Brandi should not be. She should have never been able to make it across there. And again, it was bitterly cold. And he said, the way it was told to me, he crossed the river and began to look, and he saw a little red-headed girl sitting on the ground. He knew it was Brandi, and he went to pick her up. And Dad said that it was so cold that the man that found her was kind of a mountain man. He had that big, long Duck Dynasty beard before it was really as cool as we know it to be. And it was just covered with ice, from him breathing and it being so cold. He said he reached down to pick Brandi up, and all the ground was just frozen all around except for where Brandi was sitting. And where Brandi was sitting, it was warm to the touch. And her little hands and little feet that had been exposed to that below freezing temperature all night long weren't damaged at all. They were pink and they were warm. Brandi wasn't in any distress at all. She was perfectly healthy. I think God wanted Brandi to have a attention-getting, remarkable story early on in her life. Something that would cause us to pay more attention, I think, to her. Well, this past May, Brandi passed. And Joe and I had the privilege of going to her funeral. And we got there, we saw a community that was just broken. It was just so many people that you could tell they were just heartsick that Brandi was gone. And as you begin to hear the stories of Brandi that people had to tell about Brandi and of Brandi's life, you knew that they weren't crying for Brandi. They knew what Brandi was. These were people of faith. They knew Brandi was with Jesus. They were crying for themselves. Because when Brandi was here, she made life more. And with her gone, life seemed less. Brandi didn't have, I guess, from a materialistic standpoint, a lot to offer anyone. She wasn't wealthy. She never cured any disease. She never wrote any great papers on anything. She never left her mark on the world in the way the world looks at leaving a mark. But Brandi left a space. She left a hole. Because as people told the stories of Brandi, they talked about how at just the right moment, Brandi would call them or see them. And most often than not, she'd just say to whomever, I love you, and then I'm praying for you. And it was sincere. It wasn't something she just said. It was something that she made sure that they knew that she meant it. There was a pastor at her funeral. And he was telling one of the stories of Brandi. He said a couple of years ago he was in the hospital, and the doctors hadn't given him really any chance to survive. Told him that that there was nothing else they could do, and that he wasn't ever going to leave that hospital. And he said that one day he got a phone call, and they brought him the phone, and they said it was Brandi Noel. He said he picked up that phone, and Brandi told him, and I don't remember the man's name. We're going to call him Randy Smith. He said, Randy Smith, I'm praying for you. And the pastor paused, and he said, you know, whenever Brandi had to tell you something, she called you by your name to make sure you were listening. And Joe and Walton and Don and I, we got to see that while we were in camp in Texas. She called her dad, Daddy. Except when she had something to tell him that she really wanted him to listen to, and she'd say, Randy, and then she'd tell him whatever she needed to tell him. But she said, Brandi told him, I'm praying for you. I love you, and you're going to get better. Goodbye. That was it. That was the conversation as I heard it, as it was told. And Brandi, the pastor said immediately he began to feel better. And ultimately he left that hospital. You look at Brandi's life, and you look at what she had to offer and what she had to deal with in her life. What Brandi had to offer, she gave. Time and time again, we told that she'd show up at an event or show up at someone's house, and it made it better. Anytime Brandi showed up, whatever the situation, good, bad, or ugly, Brandi brought something positive to it. And that caused me to begin to look at my life and begin to ponder with everything that I have, with everything that God has blessed me, what am I bringing to this world? I realized that I looked at hundreds of people that were broken because she wasn't there, that this young lady, in 26 years, with Down syndrome, affected more people's lives than most people that are born healthy and into privilege and with opportunity will affect in 90 years of living. Because she simply wanted people to know that she loved them. She simply wanted people to know that she was praying for them. She didn't hold back. She didn't have some idea of herself, some image she was trying to live up to or wanted other people to think about her. She just wanted people to know that she loved them. And Brandi knew a simple truth. Brandi loved Jesus. And before she died this past May in her hospital bed, they filmed this just a couple of days before she passed. It was her favorite song, but I also believe when I heard it again with new ears, because in this song is a very simple truth. Won't you listen?
Defend us for the Yes, yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so.
How about a big thumbs up?
I'm going to ask you now, what are you doing with your life? What truth do you know? What are you holding back because you have some idea of what you should be or how you should be? Do you know that simple truth that Jesus loves you? And because of that simple truth, you're compelled to love others. Brandi didn't hold anything back. And what I learned from Brandi Noles, and what others learn from Brandi Noles, is you take what God has given you and you give it to others. What are you doing with what God has given you?